Welcome to the Pro Farmer Podcast, your source for what's impacting prices today and your guide to what will impact markets in the weeks ahead. More substance, less fuss. The Pro Farmer Podcast starts now.
Good morning. Welcome to the Pro Farmer Podcast. It is December the 8th, 2025. Joining me now is Hillary Mason. Hillary, I want to jump straight to cattle. We'll talk corn, soybeans, and wheat, of course. We'll get some hogs in there. But gosh, cattle actually had a pretty decent week last week. On Friday, I had February fats up $3.15 to 227.15. Up $11, almost $11.25 on the week. Same deal with the feeder cattle futures. A higher close on Friday, up just over $15 on the week. Cattle just won't stop. A lot of people are looking for a technical top. When can it stop? Is it going to keep going here? These are all questions, and yet the cattle keeps answering with, "Yeah, we're just going to hang right in here." Hillary.
Yep, it feels like the cattle bulls are back in the saddle again. But, the 40-day moving average, Davis, we're there. That could be, and we're overbought. Futures are overbought, so we could see a pause here, maybe a corrective pullback. But, I don't know that the rally's over. It just may be a good pause, which is certainly healthy after, the gains that we've seen from the November 25th low. So,
And I haven't been able to observe necessarily any major shifts in the fundamentals that have underpinned this market this whole time. Are you seeing anything there that might raise your eyebrows?
no, not at all. Supplies are just still tight, and they're going to be for a while. But yeah, no, cash cattle trade it it turned higher last week, and so that might keep this rally rolling this week. I mean, there were some pretty solid gains. We'll get the official cash average here, later on, but it was firmer, and I say we may pause around the 40-day moving average, but that's just Hillary being cautious. So.
Sure. Well, and I think you raise a good point there. The fundamentals are still pretty solid, but if we do see some selling, it's probably going to be based on some technical features. Fair statement.
Absolutely, 100%,
All
100%.
right. Well, we'll keep an eye on that. The Hogs kind of played along as well. Uh, I would call it a moderately higher close.
Mhm.
February lean hogs on Friday up a little over 42 cents. 82.27 and a half was the number there. Up a buck 27 and a half on the week there. The hogs look pretty sporty too here. It seems like a healthy market to me in the hogs.
Yeah, finally, the cash index, we finally saw a gain for the first time in a long time, and so it feels like that seasonal lull has played out, and so I feel good about how futures going into the end of the year. I think there was some confusion. I didn't really like the way we closed off the high on Friday, but it sounds like just from the African swine fever situation, but it sounds like that's kind of under control. I mean, it's exports are not in the shadows as much, and so it feels a little better from that point. So I do feel pretty positive about hogs. So.
How much does the Christmas feast season figure into this? Is that still a market mover as far as demand for hams in particular and maybe roasts as well?
No, yeah, absolutely. People love their protein, and so yeah, the holiday demand is real, and I'd say that's certainly playing into all of this too. So.
All right. Well, take us over to the corn market. We had a little bit of pressure on Friday's close, 444 and three quarters. It just sort of seems like corn is range bound and just kind of stuck there until dot dot dot. I don't know how to fill in that blank, Hillary.
Yeah, nope, that was I was sitting here, I was kinda thinking about, like, what am I gonna talk about with corn? And I'm like, consolidation is the word that describes the corn market, and it's been
Mhm.
it's been that way, since at the end of November, and so, it's range bound. We have, resistance at the 200-day moving average. That has not gone away. We've breached it a few times, but it's obviously a sticking point. But we do have support around the 10-day moving average, and that's where the range is, and it's a pretty narrow range, and so, I got to think that we're going to break out eventually. And I will say, I mean, all eyes are kind of on China's corn market right now. It's really gained by leaps and bounds since the end of October, and so that could really help limit, a corrective pullback or any breakout to the downside. Also, wheat seems to be, pretty solidly supported. So that could be
Well,
helpful.
yeah, before we get on to soybeans, I did want to jump over to wheat here.
Mhm.
Wheat and corn kind of seem to be in cahoots here, but wheat looks a little more inspired than does the corn market presently.
We're on the same page here. It's definitely playing the same game as corn. We do have resistance at the November high and the 200-day moving average in wheat, but that's kind of I mean, we have some room to the upside here before we reach those levels. And I will say, I think wheat's got a stronger technical support position. Than does corn. It could. I mean, it may be kind of shaping up like corn. We could see a larger move in the wheat market too, because we have kind of consolidated over the past few sessions. The dollar's definitely been helpful to the grain complex for sure. So we'll see. We'll see what the dollar does. We'll see what the Ukraine and the Russia situation, if that takes a turn. But that's certainly, I think, played into the wheat market too. So
Hillary, is this the sort of world where if wheat jumps on some on who knows why, is corn probably going to be a pretty willing follower to the upside then?
I think so. I think so. I think this grain complex is just looking for a reason to really to go higher, and I don't know that it's going to go higher in earnest, but
Mhm.
it's certainly, with demand, on the corn side especially, there's certainly a floor across the grain complex. So.
Okay, very good. Well, we got to talk about soybeans, Hillary. I don't like the setup here coming into Monday morning. We're at 11.05 and a quarter in the January contract, down 14 and a quarter cents on Friday's close, 32 and a half cents lower all told when last week wrapped up. If we talk about soybeans resisting an 11 handle, I mean, I'd be a whole lot happier at 11.95 than I am at 11.05. Is this foreboding? Are we concerned here?
Yeah, the word to describe the soybean market is dog.
Hmm.
That's what I have deemed it this morning on a Monday morning. But yes, although we do have support at the 40-day moving average, which ironically coincides with the psychological $11 level. So, maybe we'll see a little bit of we're seeing some support here, but it feels heavy. It does not feel good. Just a general confusion and uncertainty around the timing of China's purchase or imports from the U.S. are, I think, certainly weighing on things. And also, too, I think probably the Trump administration's plan to announce an aid package this afternoon is probably weighing on things a little bit. But we are in oversold territory, and again, maybe we'll see some significant support at this 40-day moving average, which again is in line with that $11 level. So doesn't feel good. It does not feel
Yeah.
good, Davis. But
Well, and is am I seeing soybean meal seems like it's kind of acting as a bit of a technical weight on the soybean futures as well. Are you seeing that?
Yeah, and that's yeah, absolutely. And we could see maybe this soy meal market decide, hey, I mean, because I don't know how many consecutive declines we saw in the soy meal. I didn't count them, but several. So
Too
if
many.
it decides to turn around, and I mean, obviously that's gonna be strong support for soybeans. So
Yeah.
hopefully we see that step in. So.
Well, you mentioned an announcement this afternoon. I imagine editor Bill Watts and I are going to discuss that in the next segment here, at least a little bit. What are you looking forward to this week? What's coming up that might goose these markets one way or the other?
Yep, absolutely. We have the WASI and production reports this week, which are typically kind of snoozers this month, but we'll see. With the government being shut down, it could throw a curveball. Also, too, the Fed's expected to lower interest rates, so that'll be a big deal. Marketplace will be tuned into what Jerome Powell has to say after the meeting concludes on Wednesday. Then, of course, yeah, the aid package from the Trump administration is set to be released this afternoon at 2 p.m., I believe. So, but yeah, we'll let Bill give a little more detail on that and insight. So,
Outstanding. Well, Hillary, thanks for checking in with us this morning. I appreciate your insights. Have a great
Mhm.
week. Everybody, stick around through this break. We'll be right back with Bill Watts, editor of Pro Farmer.
Hey everyone, Davis Michelson here, and if you're one of the listeners without access to Pro Farmer's daily market reports and policy insights, this message is for you. Right now, you can start a free trial to Pro Farmer, unlocking the same profit-boosting information that farmers have trusted for over 50 years. Sign up online at tryprofarmer.com. No credit card needed. Visit tryprofarmer.com to sign up and get more details and updates on the topics we're discussing today, plus much, much more.
Get the latest markets, weather, and rural news whenever it works for you. Farm Journal TV is on Roku, Fire TV, and mobile. Try it for free for 14 days and take ag with you everywhere.
Welcome back to the Pro Farmer Podcast. Glad you're here, everybody. I'm Davis Michelson. With me now, Pro Farmer editor Bill Watts. Bill, we don't probably need to spend a ton of time on this, but Hillary and I were talking about the cattle market, and it kind of got me thinking about this time of year. Um, producers need to start making some decisions. Do I hold back some heifers for breeding? Do I market these cattle? What do we need to do here? I just wonder if you could just kind of walk us through some of the a light version of the seasonals on cattle. Bill, any thoughts?
Well, I think there is one interesting phenomenon to keep in mind about cattle as we come into the year, and that is over the last several years, we have seen cattle perform strongly in December. And we'll have a piece coming up on Pro Farmer later today. We talked to Peak Trading Research, and they have found that actually we've seen live cattle rally over a 17-day trading period that begins around now, uh, or for the last 17 years. We've seen this trade work out to the positive.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's kind of interesting, because this is the time of year we really see traders start talking about a Santa Claus rally in the stock market, but
Mhm.
it's actually this cattle trade has been more reliable and consistent than that phenomenon has tended to be.
Interesting. And as I said, as producers are starting to make decisions, is there risk here that maybe we get that flash in the pan, that Santa Claus rally in the cattle, and it kind of skews their perspective a little bit on the market's potential moving forward into 2026?
Well, but there's a lot of there are a lot of potential pitfalls out there, and I think it's going to be interesting to see how that seasonal holds up this year.
Yeah.
I think there's a story in the Wall Street Journal overnight, just highlighting the Trump administration's focus on trying to bring beef prices down and talking about a beef task force. And some of the other factors that tend to drive this rally include the fact that people tend to want to trade up maybe and buy more expensive cuts and things heading into the holidays. Now, is that going to hold up now with beef prices high? We've already seen a tendency for some consumers, at least, to be shifting away from those things. So I think it's going to be an important test to see if that trend holds this year. um, but I think what that it may be an interesting test of consumer demand, and what that tells us may be important for setting up the market going forward. But I don't know that having a rally here would necessarily tell you much, one way or the other in terms of where we go in the new year. But
Okay.
it's worth keeping an eye on.
You said some scary words there, Bill. It harkens back to I'm from the government and I'm here to help. Beef task force. Um, I find that a little daunting, Bill.
Yeah, but it really seems to just kind of be reinforcing what we've been hearing really since mid-October, right? Which is this concern from the White House about beef prices, and obviously affordability is a sore subject. So the things that were mentioned are things that we've already heard about. Right? The increasing beef imports from South America, eventually opening the Mexican border to feeder cattle again. And I think we saw the market rally last week, even though we did see that treatment approved for screwworm, which seems to be another item that moves us closer maybe towards that reopening. So I think the article also kind of was an interesting piece in that it also noted sort of the whether questioned whether the lasting impact of some of these measures. But it shows that mentality is still very much in place in terms of that focus on trying to address beef prices.
Yeah. Okay, that was excellent. Excellent. Let's you know what, this funding package, I don't think anybody really knows quite what to expect here. I mean, there are expectations 12 to 14 billion dollars or something in aid to farmers. We're probably just going to have to kind of wait and see. Have you got any inside scoop on what's up with the funding package to be announced later today?
Yeah, I don't really know much in the way of details other than what's been
Yeah.
reported. Bloomberg is saying it's going to be a $12 billion package, a one-time payment, $11 billion in one-time payments under this what they're calling the Farmer Bridge Assistance Program, with the remainder for crops that aren't covered by that. But it says what's going to be covered: corn, cotton, sorghum, soybeans, rice, cattle, wheat, potatoes. And it's pretty wide ranging.
Yeah.
I guess we'll see what the details are this afternoon.
Well, and I guess I'll just point out we'll have all the details that are available as soon as we've got them on profarmer.com. Fair statement, Bill?
Absolutely right.
Outstanding. Take us to the WASDE. Hillary mentioned we've got a supply and demand report coming up this week. She threatened a snoozer this time around, Bill. I wonder what your thoughts might be. Looking forward to that.
Yeah, that's certainly the reputation for the December report. Since we don't get a crop production report, it's the focus really here is, do we see some tweaks on the demand side? And usually it ends up not being great shakes. This time around, the estimates that we've seen, the consensus is for about uh, for some trimming of the U.S. ending stocks for corn and wheat, and a boost to the soybean ending stocks. So we'll see where we come out on that. I think obviously we've seen corn. The export demand has been really robust, running at a pace that's well ahead of what USDA has penciled in. Although I think there's a sense that won't continue. At the current breakneck pace, but still it's been strong. And I think the wild card out there is what happens with feed and residual use. You still got a lot of, going back to those Mexican feeder cattle, right there. We've seen Mexico really taking a lot of U.S. corn, and obviously it's going for that. That's a big part of the reason. So I think there's been this question of do we uh, would we raise exports but take some off out of that feed category? Remains to be seen, but that's I think that's where the attention is around corn. And then I think on soybeans, it's the question of what's going on, with the export pace and the China story, and trying to make sense of that and see where we end up.
Do you think we can expect to get any insights on USDA's expectation of soybean trade with China from this report here, and maybe some export forecasting?
I think that may be, sort of the name of the game after we get the numbers. I think that, that people will try to make some inferences, depending on what we get.
Okay. We'll be watching that closely. And we've got a Fed meeting this week too, Bill, as if all of that weren't enough here. Seems like I think I read somewhere 90% of respondents are expecting a 25-point basis rate cut. Um, uh, is I don't know that the market would even respond with everyone expecting that. The only thing it might respond to is no cut at all. Fair?
Yeah, I think that would be the shocker. Although I think people will pay attention to the dissents. Do we see people dissenting in favor of a hold, assuming
Okay.
that we do get a cut. Sort of what's the breakdown there in terms of that, and of course what Powell has to say afterwards will be, people will be paying close attention to that, in terms of what happens with the pace. Remember the last meeting he came out and he was very very wary of people factoring in, just automatically assuming that we would get a cut in December just because the data was so foggy, as he put it, due to the government shutdown. Now here we come around, the markets come back around to the idea that's going to happen. But there's also a lot of attention on the succession that's imminent at the Fed as well. So that's also a factor in mind. I think people are gearing up for an easier Fed and more rate cuts here to come, which depending on what happens with inflation, has implications for long-term interest rates as well, which are also very important down on the farm as well. So I think there's a lot to pay attention to when it comes to the Fed, both this meeting and heading into the new year.
Absolutely, and I think you put your finger on it right there, Bill. Lots to pay attention to this week. This week's newsletter should be a real humdinger with lots of meat on the bone there. Lots to write about. Anyway, Bill, I love the way that you look at the details of issues like these and you pull out what's really important and what we need to be paying attention to. Your perspective is absolutely invaluable. We'll have to find out on all of these things as the week goes on, but I know the Pro Farmer will cover it as we always do. Bill Watts, editor of Pro Farmer, thanks for being with us this morning. Have a great week, pal.
Thanks, Davis. You too.
Well, that was Bill Watts. Also, thanks to Hillary Mason and production support from Zach Zingula for all of us here at Pro Farmer. Thanks for watching the Pro Farmer Podcast.
Thanks for joining us. We'll return next week with another episode of the Pro Farmer Podcast. And remember, everything talked about today is updated throughout the week on ProFarmer.com and in this Friday's Pro Farmer newsletter.